Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Thursday session. So, we've been covering a lot of different materials over the last few weeks, and from some of the comments and the questions that I'm getting from you guys, one of the things that I have realized is that we never actually went through a full release process. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through the basics of a release and tell you what is really important about the release. So for today's session, I want you to do a couple of things. So the first thing is we're going to pick a topic that we are going to release about. Okay, so pick something that is making you frustrated, something that you are struggling with, something that brings up a lot of emotions and thoughts, and especially something that gets your thoughts racing. Because what we want to do is we want to be in a place where we allow for our mind to allow for these thoughts to come up, but then we start to observe what is happening internally with us. The importance of the release process, and in general neurographic art and neurographica specifically, is that it is a process-based art. The idea is not, what is important is not the aesthetic, is not what it looks like, but rather the process that you're going through as you do these works of release, and the observation that you have about yourself, and the way that your thoughts change, the way that your body's response to this stimulus changes, to these thoughts change. Okay, so this is why creating that very first association is so important. So with a release, we have a few different steps that we're going to go through. So the first step is pick what you're letting go of. Pick something that you are releasing. Okay? It can be something menial, it can be something small, it can be something important. That is completely up to you. I've done releases for things such as having an argument with somebody and wanting to work through the arguments. I've also done release sessions having to do with the abuse that I went through in my life, whether it was with my ex, whether it was during my childhood, whatever. So it really doesn't make a difference what the gravity of the situation is. The process remains the same. Okay, so once you have your topic, what we want to do is conjure up all the thoughts and emotions around this topic and express them graphically. Okay, so when we do a Neurographica release, we are actually doing this release on 3 different planes. Okay, so we are expressing ourselves in terms of 3 general consciousness levels. On a personal level, the self; on a societal level; and then the divine. So if you do all of these aspects every time you do a release, then you're doing a Neurographica release, because Neurographica is very rigid. I don't always do all the steps when I do a release. This is why I say that I don't practice Neurographica and I practice neuroart. Okay, so that's the major difference. If you do all of the steps every single time, then you are more in the Neurographica territory. If you don't, then this is neuroart, but it can still give you the benefits of the Neurographica practice, even if some of them and not all of it. Okay, so this is very much a process-related art. What is important is the process that you're going through, and not necessarily what ends up on the paper, because what is happening on paper is just the graphic representations of your thoughts and emotions. Okay? So, oops. Don't know what that was. One second. Okay, sorry about that. That should fix that. So, what we want to do today is go through all the steps of doing a proper release. Okay, so once you have your topic, before we even draw a single line, before we do any of that, what we want to do is create the associations in our conscious mind and subconscious mind. The point of a release is to allow the conscious mind to get out of the way and for the subconscious mind to actually express itself. So, but we are doing that by triggering the conscious mind. The subconscious mind is always in the service of the conscious mind. Whatever your conscious mind says, your subconscious says, I take that as fact. Okay? So, what we want to do, especially for something that is creating a lot of emotion or reaction in us, is start with the conscious mind and then go into observation. Right? So one of the things that happens is when we get emotionally triggered, we start to respond to the voice inside our head that starts talking to us about whatever the issue is. What we want to do today and what we're going to do differently is we are not actually going to engage with that voice. We're going to listen to it, but we're not going to engage with it. And we're going to take out the main words, the main messages that the conscious mind is giving us, and then allow the subconscious mind to express. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is pick your topic. What are we letting go of today? Okay, for me, I'm just going to give you an example because that's the best way of that I have learned to teach, is to show you what I do. I'm going to pick something relatively small and minor today because it doesn't matter what I want to pay more attention to explaining the process. So I'm picking something smaller. Okay, and so what I want to let go of, for example, for me today, is letting go of imposter syndrome. This is something I've done before. This is something that I'm probably going to do 100 times more, but the process is what's important. So the first thing I want you to do, usually when we do this in person, what I do is I take us through a 10 to 15 minute meditation where we go into the space of the heart and we go into a place where we feel safe before conjuring up any other emotions. So that's what I want you to do. Before you start thinking about what it is that you want to release, I want you to become aware of the fact that in this moment and for the duration of this art, you are absolutely safe. There is nothing bad, there's nothing wrong that can happen to you during this time. This is really, really important. Because if you don't feel safe, then you can't really communicate with your subconscious mind. Okay? Your conscious mind, your ego kicks in and it tries to protect you. So it's really, really important that we feel safe in this moment. And the way that we tell our nervous system that we are feeling safe and we're feeling good is by taking long, deep breaths and having longer exhales than inhales. So a simple thing you can do is take deep belly breaths, 4 counts in. You don't need to hold the breath, 6 to 8 counts out. Okay, and do that a couple of times, maybe 2 or 3 times, until your nervous system really gets the memo that, hey, we're safe. I know we're thinking about something unpleasant. I know we're bringing up something that is unpleasant, but we're absolutely safe. Okay? Now, during this process also, it is important for you to keep your breathing top of mind. Okay? So we want to be taking deep breaths throughout the whole process. We don't want to be taking any shallow breaths, because that will tell our system that we are under stress and it will start releasing stress hormones into the body. That's not what we want. We want the feel good. We want the endorphins. Okay? So deep breath, count to 4, and slowly exhale. deep breath in, 4 breaths, 4 counts. Exhale. Okay, so as we do this kind of breathing, we're telling our body and our nervous system that we are in a safe place. Okay, so now what I want you to do is I want you to bring up the topic that is bothering you. Okay, and I want you to, like for me specifically, it is the voice of my mother telling me that I'm not qualified enough. It doesn't matter what the field is, it doesn't matter what the subject matter is. This is the voice in my head that I'm going to let go of today. Okay? So what I want you to do is, after you've taken a few breaths, start thinking about the topic that makes you uncomfortable. Okay? Become aware of the voice that starts talking to you. But what I don't want you to do is talk back. I don't want you to justify yourself. I don't want you to defend yourself. I don't want you to agree or disagree with the voice inside your head. I just want you to listen to it. That's all we're doing right now. We are just listening to the voice inside our head. Okay? Now, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to give us about 2 minutes on a timer, and I want you to start jotting down the main words or sentences that arise as you start thinking about this subject. So I'm giving us 2 minutes to really focus on what this is and the words and the emotions that are going to get conjured up. Okay? And after that 2 minutes, we're going to actually start doing this graphically. Okay, so I'm going to put 2 minutes on my timer. I like to do them in angel numbers, so 2 minutes, 22 seconds, a little bit over 2 minutes, for us to really focus on what it is that we are letting go of today. Okay? Let's go. So bring up the topic and think about it in your mind, and let's start writing down everything that comes up. Okay? Okay, our time is done. Now what we are going to do is we're going to count how many words we had. Now, if you had repeated words, I want you to write them down repeatedly. So don't edit yourself during this time. If you got the word joy 15 million times, write every single one of them and count them as individual words, okay? Okay, I have 35 words this time. Okay, the goal is to hit at least 20 in this 2 minutes. If you don't hit it in 2 minutes, put more time for yourself to come up with at least 20 words. Once you have 20 words, you have a pretty good association. Your mind is really engaged about this topic. And so what we can do is we can actually start the rest of the process. Okay, now that you're looking at all of these words on this piece of paper, I want you to be aware of how these words and how these sentences and how these thoughts make you feel emotionally. How are you feeling as you're putting these words down? Are you feeling angry? Are you feeling frustrated? Are you feeling disappointed? Are you feeling hurt? Are you feeling whatever the feeling is? Try to actually put a word to the ways that you may be feeling in this moment. Okay, so really pay attention to what it makes you feel emotionally. For me, the emotion that is elicited the most is frustration and disappointment. Okay. Once you have figured out what the emotion is, I want you to get really in tune with your body. Let go of any thoughts, let go of the emotions, and become very in tune with your own body. Now, what I want you to notice is any sensations you feel in your body as you identify these emotions. For me, every time this topic comes up, it is a literal pit in my stomach. I feel like there is a heavy piece of stone sitting right at the end of my esophagus, at the top of my stomach. Find that physical sensation. It can be pins and needles in your arms or legs, or it can be tension in your shoulders, it can be fogginess in your brain, it can be a piece of stone in your stomach, it can be butterflies in your stomach, it can be whatever the sensation is. Find the physical sensation that goes along with the emotions elicited from the thoughts we just had. Even if you don't put pen to paper after this point, just doing this part of the exercise of bringing up a story, bringing up something that makes you upset, then being a witness to the emotions that arise, and then finding the physical sensation and letting that physical sensation go is the most therapeutic thing you can do for yourself. In my opinion, it's 100 times more effective than talk therapy. Just becoming aware and letting go of the sensation in the body. Okay, because the body keeps the score. Your body is eavesdropping on every single thought you're having. And so there will be a physical response to emotional and thought-related stimuli. Now, what I like to do is I like to visualize attaching that physical sensation to my dominant hand and to the pen that is going to release this frustration. Okay. If the visual helps, then use a visual cord. Literally close your eyes and draw a cord from that spot with the physical sensation to your dominant hand. If the intention is enough, that's good enough as well. Okay. Then what I want you to do is from a place of peace and surrender, right? We are not fighting with the subject matter. We're not arguing with it. We're not trying to prove it wrong. We're just allowing it to express. So what I want you to do is take a deep breath in, become cognizant of the sensations, the emotions, and the thoughts. Attach them all to your pen. And then I want you to take a deep breath and let it all go. The best way to do this release is to do it audibly. Take a deep breath in and scream while you're releasing onto this piece of paper. I won't do that right now because I don't want to scream in all of your lovely ears. But when I do a proper release, when it especially is something that is hitting me deep, I will do it audibly. I will scream. Okay. Now, another thing is, this is a forceful release. Okay. If you're just doing this on your paper, you're not releasing. I usually end up breaking the nib of my pen. I don't know if you can tell with this one right now or not, but I usually end up, okay, this one works. I just needed to check, okay? But I usually end up doing my releases in pencil, with a design pencil, with a pretty thick nib, and then I'll go over it with marker. Or if I have old markers or enough of the new markers, I will use the same marker. So I'm going to use a Sharpie right now, but I want you to see the way that this release is done. This is supposed to be forceful. This is supposed to be a somatic release. So I'm going to take a deep breath in and I'm going to put all of my thoughts, my emotions, and that physical sensation all on this piece of paper. I'm going to release it all onto the pleroma, onto the field of probabilities and possibilities. By doing this, I'm taking ownership of my pain. I'm taking ownership of whatever it is that is making me upset, because once I take ownership of it, I can do something to change it. Okay, so take a deep breath in, put your pen on the paper, and really mean it when you let it go. Like you want this to be somewhat of a violent process. Yours will look a version of that. Okay? Now, the first thing we have done is we have expressed ourselves onto the pleroma, all to the field of all probabilities and possibilities. This is our self-expression. And the first thing we want to do is we need to come to peace with this ourselves. We need to come to peace with ourselves first before we go to anyone else, before we involve our family, our friends, our society, our support networks, whatever it may be. So we're going to spend a few minutes. I'm going to be quiet. If you have any questions, you can write them in the chat. But otherwise, I'm just going to give us some quiet time to round your original release. And in this time, if nothing comes up in terms of thoughts, that's fine. If you start thinking the same things you were at the beginning, the only thing I want you to be cognizant of is I don't want you to respond. I don't want you to get involved. Just observe. And observe if the quality or the content of the thoughts that you have as you round begin to change. It is always a good idea to have another piece of paper next to you when you're doing your release to jot down anything that comes up that is important that you want to remember later on. Okay? So right now we're just going to spend a few minutes rounding this original release with itself and coming to peace with it with ourselves. Coming to peace does not mean attaining perfection. It just actually means showing ourselves love. Love says, I take you as you are, not as I would have you be. So in this moment, whatever this subject is, no matter how imperfect you are in this moment, no matter how much better you could do, can you accept yourself as you are? Can you love yourself? Still allow for the possibility of growth moving forward, but in this moment, right here, right now, can you take ownership of yourself? And can you be proud of yourself? And can you love yourself and accept yourself? That's the first practice when we round with our personal expression of frustration and release. Okay? So let's just spend some time being present, and we round this with itself, and then we'll move on to the next stage. So what I like to do usually is take the same thickness pen and go over the whole thing and make my lines complete, and then I'll take a finer point tip and I will actually do the rounding with that one because it allows me to keep more details than if I were to round with the same tipped pen. If I do that, I lose a lot of the smaller pieces of detail. And then for me, it becomes difficult to resolve my original release. You don't have to, you can do your rounding with the same thickness pen as the one that you drew it with. The thicker the tip of your marker, the quicker the rounding is going to go. But then you lose more detail. So this is also why I say that I practice neurographic art and not neurographica, because in neurographica the aesthetic doesn't matter at all. It's the process itself that is the most important and what you're focusing on. But for me, the aesthetic at the end matters. So we are more in the neurographic art territory than Neurographica. Again, as we go through this process, one of two things tends to happen. Either your mind really starts speaking to you loudly, to be heard, to feel justified, to feel right, or you'll start to think of nothing at all, and you get quiet in your mind. And you'll just concentrate on finding the next intersection to round, and that's perfectly okay. We are not creating the solution with this composition. We are just calling it in. We're just putting ourselves in the energetic space to receive whatever the solution is. It does not mean it needs to come from us or our mind. eventually you get to a point where you have rounded all of the intersections within your first expression, which is your personal expression. Any problem we ever have in life isn't just our problem. It includes our relationships. It includes other people. It includes other energies. And any solution we want to have to any problem includes other people as resources, as support, as customers, as whatever it may be. We are social creatures. We cannot live without others. And so others become really, really important to the resolution of our release, whatever it is that we were releasing before. Our relationship with other people, our relationship with society at large becomes a part of how we're going to move forward. So the next step in creating a release, the second level of expression, is what we call societal. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, this problem is not just my problem. This is society's problem. And society is going to help me find a solution. Or this is not just my issue. This is an issue for everybody. And so other people are going to be part of how and what is going to resolve this thing. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take any sharp edges left anywhere, and we're going to turn those into neurographic lines. I'm doubling up my lines, you don't have to. And again, remember that every time we draw a neurographic line, what is important is the tension we feel in the process of drawing the line. Now, once you have all of the sharp edges out, you can actually take points from nexus points, from points that are very dense, and take those out as well. So in Neurographica, which again we said is a very precise process, what they care about in rounding is that when you get to this point of societal aspects of things, that you keep drawing lines until you have fully dissolved this original catharsis. So you don't actually want to be able to see your original release. You want to keep drawing lines until when you round them, you can't really see what you did in the beginning. Now, for me, that's not the marker. As soon as I feel like I have enough lines of energy coming and going into my page, into my problem, into my knot, I am fine. I don't actually need to keep going until I can no longer recognize the original work that I did. Okay? Because I don't want to deny the original emotions. I don't want to get into toxic positivity and say, hey, there's nothing but the good, there's nothing but the positive. No, there's a lot that was there that may have been ugly, that may have been uncomfortable, and I don't want to lose sight of that. So once I've done that, once I have all of my lines, we're going to do the second round of rounding, and this time we are bringing harmony and peace to the people around us that are either part of the problem or part of the solution. We are not discriminating between the two. We are just looking at society at large and harmonizing ourselves with that society. So that's what the second round of rounding does. Now this is an expression on a societal level, not just a personal level. This isn't just my dilemma. Right? This is something that everyone is dealing with or will be dealing with. And we want the help of other people and energies of other people for us to get through the frustrating and rough and difficult parts of our life. So we're calling in those energies as well. We're saying we are not alone. No matter what happens, you are never alone. This is the collective consciousness, and when we connect ourselves and our problem to the collective consciousness, then it is the consciousness of that general group that is going to come up with a solution, not just my consciousness, because I'm very limited. Society at large is also limited, but maybe a little bit less than I would be personally. So by calling in all of these energies and all of these people, we can start to have a different perspective, right? We can start to have different energies manifest themselves in our lives that may not have been possible before, or may not even ever be possible without the participation and help of other people. For a lot of us, asking for help is a big no-no. We will suffer in silence before we let anyone else know that we need help. That's part of this process. If you are one of those people, then doing these kinds of artwork will actually allow you to step out of your comfort zone of not asking for help and start letting people in and being honest with them and telling other people that love you and care about you when you actually need help and support. Because we can do absolutely anything in this life, but we can't do anything alone. need other people. We need other energies. Part of this process and this rounding is coming to terms with accepting help if offered. Not feeling like a burden, not feeling like you've got to earn your keep within your family unit or your relationship or your work relationship. It doesn't matter what the relationship is. We get into relationships in order to meet certain needs. And denying our needs is not the same as meeting them. So this practice takes you out of self-denial. You're not denying that something is wrong anymore. You are taking ownership of it. And you're choosing a different story consciously. Now, if ever during rounding you start to get dizzy, you start to get blurry vision, you start to have any of these symptoms, they're completely okay. It is not a problem. You're not doing anything wrong. All you need to do is look away for a few minutes or for a few seconds. Make sure you're drinking a lot of water. Make sure you're well hydrated. Focus somewhere else other than your page for a minute and then come back to your page. Some of these releases can be energetically very, very intense. So as you work through them, you may have more sensations in your body. It's okay. Stay present with them. Stay observant, stay present. And keep going. See, by rounding it a second time and by creating all of these lines, we actually change our original release. We actually change our problem when we let society, when we let others and their perspective in, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And you can literally see that with this art. We start with one thing, and once we let society into it, it changes, it morphs into something else. Now, sometimes this morphing is done for the better, sometimes it's not. But the moment you involve other people, the original story changes. It becomes the collective story and not the personal story. Anytime we invite other people into our life, it is really important that we try to bring peace into that interaction. People who come into our life are harmonious with us and our life goals. as you start this process, you may start to think about the people that can be part of the solution with you, and also the people who are part of the problem, people who are causing you to have this release to begin with. Or again, you may have no thoughts at all. You may have a quiet mind and all of your focus on doing the rounding and being present. That's also a good response. Because we never get the answers to the questions we're looking for in that same time. We need some time to learn. We need some time to analyze the situation, right? So when you answer something quickly, it means that your mind has been previously engaged with that subject matter. There's learned behavior, there's learned responses. When something is brand new, you don't have that to fall back on. So it's going to take you time. So even if you don't come up with any solutions right now, that's okay. You're starting the process of looking for the solution to this dilemma. And eventually, finders will be seekers. Seekers will be finders, sorry. Those who seek will eventually find. Again, don't go into neurographic art with this intention of getting something specific out of it, much like meditation. We do this for the process itself. We don't have a predetermined destination when we get into this kind of work. We're going to be curious, we're going to surrender, and we're going to see where this is going to take us. So anytime that I do a release, I do at least these 2 steps. I don't always do the next step that I will show you as soon as I'm done rounding, which is bringing in the divine energy. Sometimes I feel like I want to be the one that is responsible for bringing about something, this event that I want, or this change that I'm looking forward to, or whatever it may be. And so bringing in the divine energy sometimes feels like a cop-out. Sometimes it feels like what I'm saying is God will give it to me so I don't have to try. So I try to focus mostly on the first 2, so my personal expression and then bringing in society. And I don't always or often bring in divine energy. The divine is busier than to deal with, my issues. I can find a solution for them myself. Unless it's something really big and I feel very disempowered in front of it, then I will bring in universal consciousness or God energy. One of the things that I've learned in my life is that I will achieve a goal when I really understand that I am the only one responsible for its fruition. If I make anybody else responsible, then that disempowers me. This is why I don't often call on divine energy or divine consciousness in my neurographic art. Although Neurographica would require for you to do this every single time. It's part of the basic algorithms, it's part of the basic compositions. So they want you to do this every time. But as I've mentioned before, I find Neurographica too rigid for the way that I want to express and heal with my art. So I have been inspired heavily by them, but I do what they would consider neurographic art and not neurographica. Okay. So, usually the next step here is introduction of frequency. And we do that by introducing color. But this time, before doing that, I actually want to finish all the rounding. and I want to show you the universal consciousness line. So this is where we use the thickest chisel tip we can find. Now, the very first thing we did was our personal expression. These other lines is societal lines. We're bringing in other energies in other society. This last line is universal consciousness lines. This is divine energy. This is God energy. Call it whatever you want. Okay. Now, the way that we draw these lines is you can either follow the path of a pre-existing set of neurographic lines, or you can draw one completely by yourself. Again, these lines are also neurographic lines, so they're going to have resistance as you draw them. Okay? And you want to make sure that your universal consciousness lines have movement to them. You don't want them to be straight lines. Again, these are also neurographic lines. We usually draw anywhere between 3 to 8 neurographic, divine consciousness line. So it really depends on you and what you would like to do. Okay. Now, once we have our universal consciousness lines, what we're going to do is we're going to spend a little bit more time, and we're going to round all of the thin lines underneath with the universal consciousness lines and the universal consciousness lines with each other. Now, the reason for that is this. If I show you this right now, and these are our universal consciousness lines, and this is our thin lines underneath, the way you see it from the top, they look like they're connected. But if I were to change your perspective, you'll see there's a gap. We don't want, if we're calling in on divine consciousness, we don't want divine consciousness to go over our issues. We want it entangled, which is why we do the last set of rounding. Okay? So when you're ready, I will give us another few minutes to work on that. Then we'll color our composition and we will be done for the night. Okay? So draw your universal consciousness lines, and I will be ready. Okay, let's do this. This is the last set of rounding we're going to do. If you need to take a break from rounding in between rounds, by all means do it. But once you start doing the rounding, any of the rounds, it's recommended that you keep going until you finish. If you can't finish a set of rounding in one sitting, put yourself a timer and do that for that time. And don't take a break until that time has arrived or is completed. The idea is, if you do this, if you stop, because the rounding part is the part where we are creating neuroplasticity, and it affects our brain. If we stop doing it in the middle, what is going to happen is we're going to program procrastination into our system. This is the reason why we don't want to stop in the middle, and this is why if you have to stop, leave a timer so that your brain understands that for the time that you committed to doing this, you stayed and you worked through it. I don't know about you, I procrastinate enough as it is. I really do not need it programmed into my conscious and subconscious mind. So this set of rounding goes the fastest because all you're doing is following the path of these few lines, and any time that they intersect with the lines underneath, we're going to round those intersections. So this is probably the quickest, the easiest round, and I find that not a lot of people find a lot of resistance at this point. If you were going to have resistance to rounding, you would have had it in the first couple of rounds, especially in the societal round. But calling in on divine consciousness doesn't usually seem to be a place where people find resistance. And at this point, you've been at this art for almost 2 hours now, so you are committed to seeing this through, and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, so it becomes a little bit more easy or pleasant, because like I said, we can see the finish line once we get to this part of neurographic art. that's it. Oop. And that's it. Okay, so now the only thing that's left is to introduce frequency in terms of color. When it comes to coloring your composition, there are only 2 rules. Number 1, this is the part that you are doing to make it pleasing to your eye. Okay, so what matters now is whatever colors you choose, they're going to make this composition look beautiful for you. Okay, and the second part is that we're going to color 2 or more sections with the same color. What colors you choose is completely up to you. Okay, but we're using 2 or more sections in the same color. And when I color those sections together, I don't actually honor the boundaries between them. Okay? I actually allow my mind to see that I'm going over the lines, because frequency actually goes through solid objects. Okay? So even if there are solid boundaries there, any frequency would travel through them. Or certain types of frequencies, let's just say. Okay, so we're coloring 2 or more sections with the same color. And we don't honor boundaries between them. My Sharpie is bleeding a bit, but so be it. So you want to color up to 70% of your page. You don't necessarily want to color the whole thing, because if you do that, then what you're telling the universe is that you're dictating terms. And white by itself is a color. And if you allow for some white space, especially if you've called in divine consciousness into your work, it means you will allow for the divine to make some decisions on your behalf, and you're not dictating terms about absolutely everything that's about to happen. Okay? Okay? Once you have the portion of your page that you want colored, or colored the whole thing, you are all done with your release. Now, the last thing that you can do is take a look at your composition and see if there are any shapes that jump out at you that mean something to you. You can find the resolution of your original intention in this final step. This is not always necessary, but it is usually very helpful. Okay? This is the part where you would usually have your teacher take a look at what you've done, and they will help you figure out what your fixation is. Okay? Right now, for me, my fixation is everything that I've colored. For me, this looks like a bloom. And since my original composition or my original intention was imposter syndrome, this is kind of telling me that all I need to do is put myself out there and bloom as who I am. My vibe will beget my tribe. Okay. Now, one of the options that I have is actually to go around with my thicker marker and turn this into part of my universal consciousness line. So let me show you what I mean. If I now take my thicker marker and outline this whole flower as I see it, of course this means a little bit more rounding, but now you can see my flower. This flower wasn't there before I started coloring everything. And that's my fixation. That's my answer. After about 2 hours of work, this is what my subconscious is telling me. Okay, so I'm going to spend a couple of seconds very quickly just rounding these last couple of lines that I created. And after that, we are all done with our release. So these are all the steps that it takes to do a proper release. Okay, it is important that we recognize that in a release we are expressing in 3 different dimensions or levels of consciousness: our self, society, and divine. Okay, and what is the most important out of all of the things we do in this release is that the very beginning, the observation of the thoughts, emotions, and sensations they cause in the body. Being in that observant mindset is the power of this composition. Being able to observe, being able to stay there, stay safe, not engaged, and yet really process through whatever it is that we're thinking or dealing with. Okay? So that's it for tonight. I hope this was helpful. If you need to watch through it from the beginning, go right ahead. But these are all the proper steps to a full neurographic release. And next week, we're going to get together again. It will be on a Friday instead of the Thursday. So we're going to the 9th of February instead of the 8th. The session will happen at noon, and we're going to do a little bit of a programming session to coincide with the new moon in Aquarius. New moon is where we set new intentions, and I thought it was a good time to introduce you guys to a little bit of programming. So I will see you guys next week on Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time for a little programming session having to do with the new moon in Aquarius. And the idea next week will be to expand our horizons using neurographic art and using a little bit of programming. Thus far, majority of what we have done has been releases, and we haven't really talked about programming a lot, but next week we're going to do just that. Okay. In the meantime, if you want to be part of the in-person classes, including the Journey to Manifestation, which starts on March the 2nd, you can go onto the website right now. There is a code for you until February 14th. If you sign up between now and then, you'll be part of the early bird people, and the code early bird is going to give you over 60% off of the course. So if you want to experience this with me on Zoom, and if you are ready to bloom with the new year, with a new intention, then March 2nd is the time you want to come spend some time with me for about 6 weeks. And after this session is done, there won't be in-person access to me for this journey anymore. We're going to turn that into an evergreen content and a course that you're going to do at your own pace. So if you want to do this with me, this is your final chance starting on March the 2nd. All the information is on the website. Don't forget, just because you stayed till the end, I'm giving you the information that I've only sent to the people that are on the mailing list. And we're going to start on March the 2nd for the Journey to Manifestation. And you can use the code EARLYBIRD, all one word, to save big on this journey as well. So with that, thank you for joining me tonight. I wish you a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I will see you next Friday for our first programming session. Have a blessed night, everybody.